and the other one is...
She doesn't even need the hat.
She doesn't have a hat.
7 suited, man.
Yeah, just the leftover from yesterday. We don't get new ones.
Two rays. 625.
You get much sleep?
5 hours maybe, 4.5.
Yeah, I'm like the same. Like wake up, just like completely forgot. Like first thought, I wake up, I'm like, oh, I'm like tired. Like poker, shit. And like wake up straight away.
Yeah.
So there goes the other 3 hours I could have got.
Yeah, I was just going to stay at Josh's place. He's 20 minutes away, but I figured I'm going to either get 6 hours sleep or 5 hours of sleep, and if I can get 5 hours in my own bed, that's probably
better, right? Yeah.
Two rays, 200. Three fold. 5 fold.
Yeah, it's always nice being able to go home and At least we didn't have some crazy early start for this.
Hey?
At least we didn't have a crazy early start for this.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely taxing. How many hours did we play yesterday? We start. Oh, you just would have started day 2 at 1?
1.
So we played like 13 minus
12,
some breaks,
12,
whatever, yeah.
12 hours basically, yeah. Oh,
Big enough.
Yeah, 13 and breaks, yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's a big day.
Two rays, 200. Three fold. Five fold.
Welcome everybody back to our coverage of day 3, an unscheduled day 3 of the grind. 5 remaining, $1,250 buy-in. We guaranteed $100K for this one, obliterated it, and it's $46,000 up top. As you're not going to have to listen to me drone on all day. I'm very lucky to be joined in the booth by Didier, APT Ambassador. Didier, welcome.
Hey, Braden. I am thrilled to be here to see these guys close it out. What a great tournament it's been.
I mean, Elizabeth Busson, 80 years of age.
Incredible.
She's had the chip lead for basically 3 days straight.
What a great story. I mean, I just love that about poker. I met her this week and she came up to me and gave me a hug and introduced herself speaking French. So that was a lovely way to meet her for the first time. And yeah, I actually saw your interview with her at APT
did
Gold
you catch
Coast.
that? Yeah, that's great.
It was really interesting to hear. You know, she's had a bit of success here. This is far from an anomaly for her.
No, she came second in this event last year to Dipper. And yeah, that interview with her was amazing. Obviously did that last year.
It's a fun run out.
As Aiden didn't say much all of yesterday.
Fold. Fold.
Wow. Okay.
And
really
I did that
tripped, man.
interview with Elizabeth in the Gold Coast last year, but we had a few of her family members on.
Good trips
We had a
as
few of her
well.
family members on
Very
the
good
chat
trips.
last night, and they saw the interview for the first time, like daughters and granddaughters and whatnot, and they absolutely loved it. Like they've been tuning in, watching Liz from the beginning of the stream. So it was good to be able to do an interview like that, and her family members were able to see it. She's been playing poker more than you and I have been alive. So it's incredible stuff.
Isn't that great? I have to admit, that's why I find myself wanting to play more and more tournaments than cash games. It's about including those kinds of people in the results, which I've always found, a lot of my years playing cash is just a more isolated experience. And getting all your friends and family here to support you in something they can actually sort of participate in as well. We've got the banter going in the live chat. We'll be answering questions and stuff today. I think it's wonderful. What a great experience for her family to see her doing this and competing at her age and showing what she can do with a lifetime's worth of experience that a lot of these people won't have. Corey's going to have a lot of different experience with the amount of hands that he's played, but she'll have played hands with so many more people in her life. And it's just wonderful to see her putting all of these kids to the test.
Oh, that pot yesterday versus Romain, where she decided she wasn't going to be pushed around, and Romain really never recovered from it. And he was our bust out in 6. But I mean,
that's the Belgians and the French for you.
And
I say that as a Frenchman.
I've asked everyone who's been in the booth. A lot of people have been very generous with their time. Trying to remain as impartial as possible, but I have asked everyone who their tip would be from the point of when they arrived into the booth. So, what about you with 5 left, the way these stacks are distributed? Who would be your pick from here?
They're pretty interesting stack sizes looking at it. There's not a huge gap between anyone. What is that, 12 bigs between the short stack and Corey and Elizabeth there? So it's actually very sensitive. It's kind of a beautiful poker spot because you really can choose your own strategy here. And whilst I haven't seen what these guys have been up to, I'm obviously familiar with a couple of these people. I went deep with Aiden in the Centurion last year. I know he can put pressure on in the right spots. Corey, I've played a lot with over the last sort of year or so, but as the short stack, it'll be interesting to see what his sort of analysis of the other players is and how active they're being in terms of how much he goes for it right now. Normally you'd say that he's sort of the least handcuffed here in terms of ICM because he needs to try and have other interactions happen to try and get a pay jump, but if other people are going nuts here, then he can adjust. It's a little bit tricky. I'd say, Braden, to answer your question, after a long story there, I'm just going to back Elizabeth because it would feel wrong not to, I've got to root for her. So whether it's my heart or my head, I'm going to choose Elizabeth. But let's see what happens.
Don't blame your answer there. We had Liam in the booth yesterday, picked Romain. He came in as the chip leader on the FT, and you think, he'd probably be someone who would back himself on this FT with the amount of chips he had, but tournament poker is a wild thing.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, no, I would have expected him to be the favorite actually going in. He's had probably one of the hottest years in live tournaments this year and online actually. He had a really big score where he final tabled something with Yeater. I think they chopped it from memory.
I'm pretty sure they came in 7th and 8th in chips and chopped it.
Just 2 little ninjas. Just 2 absolute ninjas.
It's something like that.
Navigating their way to the chop. Give them all the money. Yeah, and Roman also had scores in, I think, Gold Coast and Victoria in different events. So he's having a huge year with another FT here. Good on him. I know he ran pretty cold for parts of last year, so happy for him.
That's his 7th warning cap. Just
Of course, Jigsy Reyes looking for his second
holds the
tournament
game up
victory this week.
And what a comeback he made on the Drakakis FT. He was one of the short stacks. I was on that FT with him.
I wasn't aware of that, actually.
Yeah, and when I heard that he won it, I was like, really? Wow, what a comeback. Because Cooper and Michelle had pretty much all the chips when I was leaving the stage.
And we've had Jigsy. If Jigsy wins this, he'll be the 4th person this week to win 2 trophies.
Oh my goodness.
It's pretty crazy. Joe Ting taking down the Bankroll Builder and the Empress.
Good on her.
And Josh took down the Hashem Deep Stack, and then the next day took down the Poker Shop.
Wow.
And he's only played 4 APT events
Oh my
in his
goodness.
entire life.
50% win rate is pretty strong.
And one of the others he final tabled. So he's final tabled 3 of 4 events played.
That's pretty crazy.
And there is another dual event winner. I'll just think of that.
Jared Thatcher, I believe.
It is. That's the one. Jared Thatcher taking out the 6 max and beating Dan Johnson heads up last night in the 1500.
That's crazy. I have never heard of a series where that many people won 2 events, I think.
If Jigsy wins this, it'd be 4. So pretty crazy over the span of a series that's 7 days.
Yeah, and he's got a great chance, you know. Big pot every time Elizabeth and Corey interact, isn't it?
Yeah, it does change things. And George has been short for most of our coverage, but won a really big pot towards the end of the night, and it's now second in chips.
This is a very interesting open with Queen 9-0 from under the gun.
We've seen Jigsy do this. Yesterday we were 8-handed, and George was actually sitting out, so there was no one in the big blind, and Jigsy opened Queen 4-0 under the gun.
Wow.
8-handed, wow. So he's capable of doing some funky stuff.
He wants to take a polar strategy, I understand, with the Queen 4-0. Could be Queen 4-0, could be aces.
Correct.
It is interesting from an ICM perspective, though, to see his stack in particular doing this kind of thing. Just as Corey starts to extend out a little bit and being head of 8 in there too, I would have thought that he sort of wants to chill the most out of all of these guys. But like I said earlier, you know, it's really going to depend on the strategy these players want to take today when the stacks are still so close, you know. If Nacho was here, we know what he'd say.
You want to play the beast if you make it?
How has 2025, or maybe even the last 12 months, been for you, Didier? Have you done a lot of travelling around? I know you've had some pretty decent scores, but just talk us through maybe even your start to 2025, how that's gone for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been very blessed. I've been playing poker for a long time now, 13 or 14 years, and I'd say the last year and a half has been just a dream. You know, haven't run like this before and had a lot of results that I'm really happy with. I chopped a tournament for 525k online in January, which is my career record. I previously was in December of 2023, so it's all come really fast, and I'm just very thankful for all of what's been happening. You know, I really couldn't say more. And yeah, this year I'm looking forward to, I think, doing a bit more travel in Australia before a big WSOP, and fingers crossed.
Yes, okay, so we're going to be heading overseas?
Yeah, absolutely. Try and do probably all of the series, pending what I do with Sydney Championships. I know they have their event on the last day of the 28th, so I have to decide if I want to do that or be their first day for WSOP.
Full schedule, full series. You'll be in Vegas for the full time?
Yep, determined.
Very.
I lost heads up in 2014 for a bracelet, and the PTSD is still there, Brayden.
What event was that in?
That was an 1100 no limit hold'em opening event.
Oh no.
No, it's all part of the journey and the experience.
I think
This is interesting.
Jigsy going to fire again here after barreling the turn. Dare say this one.
It is interesting to imagine what he's trying to blow Elizabeth off when flop goes check check. You know, maybe some ace highs he's hoping for, but she's not exactly going to have a lot of turn 6x. Maybe looking at something like 8s. Oh wow! Or
as Liz calls Jigsy down with the king high and will lose to a better king high. Did he? What are we thinking there?
Yeah, I'm.
You are
that is
so lucky.
that is very interesting. Jigsy's going to feel very, very lucky to have his bluff called by worse. And it's one of those spots where actually, for people watching, Elizabeth had the right read. You know, like she's literally said, "Nope, you're bluffing," and you wouldn't expect him to be bluffing with a better hand than what she's actually holding. So I actually like what Elizabeth did, even though she's not stacking the chips right now. You have to give her credit. She had the right read, but Jinxie was sort of trying to get her off a different type of hand and has gotten a little bit fortunate there. And now takes a pretty sweet chip lead.
As he closes in towards 4 million for the first time in this tournament. Just touching back on what your plans are for the rest of the year. After coming back from Vegas, we might have a series in Sydney for APT. What are we thinking there, Did if you've got anything to announce to the viewers at home?
APT Sydney is going to be July 25th to August the 3rd. I'm really excited about it. Going to have a lot of our flagship events there with some new things. It's something that we're taking a lot of feedback from the players. Every event I've played, I've been listening to people, lots of great suggestions that people want to see, and yeah, really pumped to be back in Sydney for the first time since 2023 with APT.
Yeah, wow, it's been that long.
Yeah, Bankstown, I believe, was the last one.
You had some luck there as well. Did you? No?
I did. I took home the lion's share of the 25K.
That's right.
First time I ever played a 25K. Pretty lucky. Pretty lucky guy, Braden.
What about State of Origin was held in the Vocos Centre in Brisbane.
But that will be at Sydney this year.
Yes.
New South Wales will have home ground advantage for the first time in history.
And you'll be team captain
of
that. Talk us through, is going to be any changes in relation to how the State of Origin is going to be played? Obviously, we saw a lot of different formats, makeup of the teams and all that type of stuff. So just talk us through what you think might be happening for State of Origin in New South Wales.
It's going to be on August the 2nd, which is a Saturday, and I'm happy to confirm we have all of the captains locked in, and there'll be an announcement incoming for what they'll be looking for, because from all the states in Australia, we're glad to have Tasmania back with us this year, and every state will have the opportunity to have players qualify for their team, and the captains will be on the lookout all the way through this year. No one's been picked in any of the teams yet, and they want to see what people can do this year at all of the events around Australia and who deserves to make the team. I'm certainly open. I will reveal that it would be a little egregious for New South Wales not to have the reigning Australian Poker Player of the Year, so I think Malcolm's done enough. I think he's had an okay year. I'm going to reveal that one in terms of New South Wales. He'll definitely be in the team. But aside from that, I had to tell the guys, even though you guys got second last year and we cashed, I have to give all the opportunity in the world for people to show what they can do this year. And I really want people to feel like they can make the team. And I also know that there's going to be a female player in all the teams this year, so I think it's going to be a much more exciting event to have so many faces that we really relish in the poker community joining us in that capacity. And let's see what happens in terms of the broadcast, talking to some interesting partners. But the format will be the same. It will be a one-day event with the players all playing 3 shootout sit and goes with points for each of the finishing positions. And I know Western Australia will be determined to get the 3-peat, which will be outrageous as they defend their title again.
How long do you usually take to make
Those guys out in Perth, they seem to have a knack of winning that stuff that's out. Like, I'm just remembering the fantasy for APL. They absolutely destroyed that. They sit down, people like Dale Mars, and they sit down and work out every single edge possible outside of what's happening in the poker series. So it's no surprise to see that they're going for 3 State of Origins in a row, knowing that crew like I do.
I like that they're really into the team-based aspect, whether it's fantasy draft, like you just mentioned, or
they
State of Origin.
Everybody.
Yeah. Dale's always been a really sporty guy. He gets into those things and makes it a great team dynamic. He's been a fantastic captain for Western Australia, and he will be again this year.
Competitive lawn bowl player, I think he is, or it's a different cat. But yeah, when it comes down to that type of stuff, They're always on the ball, and so you can confirm that there'll be one female for each team.
Yes.
The captain has to lock in a female for
Yep.
each state.
Yep, and they will also have their own sit and go at the start, as the vice captains, the captains, and our icon players do. So,
Jeez, you're going to be pretty stiff if you're a vice captain from another side going up against Malcolm Trainer in a sit and go. You might be a little unlucky there. But
I was so impressed by the talent on show and the vice captain sit and go last year. I think you'll struggle to find a more elite table or final table for the next foreseeable future that we had on that table. I shudder to think what the combined live tournament winnings was, having people like Kale, Malcolm, Andrew Moreno, Travis, Anders V, Corey Kempson. It was just such a stacked lineup. It was insane. Oh, Vincent Huang, who came to join us in between Tritons. It was amazing.
I think, it's really good to be able to announce that, especially with the State of Origin, because the vibe in the Voco Centre the first time we held it, I actually recall the State of Origin being held in Crown in the early days, which is where Tony's kind of got the inspiration from. It's just something, team-based poker is so rare, and it's usually anti-sweating or like the anti-sweating for those sit and goes was off the charts.
Yeah.
It's just the vibe is completely different compared to anything else in poker. So do you think it's a concept that's here to stay in the long run?
Yeah, I think we can confidently say it's going to be an annual event now. And now that it's back, people absolutely loved it. There were some really nice stories last year, seeing the camaraderie and the way people spoke about representing not just themselves, but a team. I have to admit, my personal highlight, and leaning into the New South Wales team, I saw Jared Thatcher was heads up, and I think in his second sit and go with not many chips. The person he was playing had a huge chip lead, and I'd never seen his wife before, and she came to support him for the first time, and she was wearing his New South Wales hat, and she got to watch him come from absolute crumbs to win his sit and go, and she was so happy for him. And I think that really summed up the message of the day for me, seeing like people's loved ones who hadn't necessarily come in to see poker before. I've played with Jared for many years and never seen his partner there, and she was cheering for him, and he was so happy. And I think there were a lot of experiences like that. A lot of the sit and goes went heads up for a long time. I recall Ragazzoni's. All the Victorian boys were celebrating and cheering with him when he won his. Dale, usually a pretty composed guy, was cheering when WA won, and they had some big moments as well. It was a lot of fun.
Actually, myself just met Jared's partner for the first time last week. Ran into them in a cafe in Gold Coast, and Jared came up and was very generous with his time here on Friday. 4 hours of expert commentary from Jared Thatcher on Friday. If you're looking to get better at the game, you could just listen to that stream. He basically predicted what everyone was going to do at all times. But we spoke a lot about how it can be difficult travelling around when you have a family at home and a partner at home and all that type of stuff. So it was good to see her. I remember seeing her at the Voco Centre, and she came up to the Gold Coast as well. Do you find that poker can interfere with aspects outside of, like, your personal life and all that type of stuff? Because it's a very all-encompassing endeavour, time and effort and all that type of stuff. So
it's very difficult to make it to every single series these days if you have family commitments, because there's a lot on in Australian poker, frankly, these days. It can be tricky, and not everyone has the opportunity to make it away for several months at a time as well, for things like WSOP. Also, a lot of Australians have tax concerns going over there, so it's easier to play the domestic stuff here, in my opinion. But this is an interesting hand here. Jigsy and Aiden both turn a king, and it's been played fairly passively so far. Just a blind versus blind on counter. Jigsy more likely worried about a flush than he is two paired here with the way this is played out.
You like this size from Aiden, just on a third to two pair, flush completer on the river?
I think it's a very interesting decision on the turn for me, more so than the river, I think, to just flat this turn bet. We probably do want to be putting in a raise here on a board of this texture when there's going to be hands in the blind versus blind ranges that we can still cooler. While it's nice to get a double barrel through if he has air, I think this is the exact situation where we probably lost a little bit of value, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I figured. Really nice turn card.
Not much, not much. We ran deep in the APL Centurion that we both final tabled this last APL Millions. But that was my first experience playing with him, and didn't run into too many hands against each other. So I wouldn't have a solid understanding of his game, but he has seemed like he's made a lot of the right decisions at this final table in between when I tuned in last night and from what I've seen today. He's certainly navigated a few bigger folds, so he seems like he's quite ICM aware, and I would suggest that's probably what played into him taking, as I noted before, a much more passive line here, with the stacks being quite close, and yeah.
Been away from the felt for some time to concentrate on other things, Aiden, but he has been playing fairly high stakes cash for a long time. So if you're up in Brisbane, you'd be aware that Aiden is a beast. He's probably one of the most respected, cash game players in these parts. And just coming back to the felt now when he's got some spare time. And look what's happened. He's final tables the Centurion. He's final tabled the grind. So
Corey knowing his man here and just shooting through the ace-8 suited. Priscilla saying that George needs to win so he can buy her dinner.
Thanks, Catherine.
it would be some type of rail photo if George took this out. When he won Ace Queen versus Eatons Ace King to stay alive, it was as loud as I've heard the Eatons Hill for some time. So
that's a great vibe when people have support here and those kinds of numbers.
Obviously a owner or part owner of Empire Poker, which is down the road, and I feel like Empire had just finished and all of the staff had come down, walked down the hill to Eatons Hill as he was all in with Ace Queen, Ace King. So it was all the staff members of Empire behind him cheering in the Queen, which came in the window.
So update me on George. Does he work at Empire or just
he's an owner?
An owner? Oh,
yes.
okay, yeah.
And regular plays absolutely everything.
That's nice to have him join us. I've heard great things about their room and the way they run their tournaments. I know our owner, Tony Hashem, final tabled their deuce to 7 single draw.
Yes,
so
yes.
I was certainly interacting between the two brands.
I was in that tournament, actually. It's the only tournament I've played this week. We cut the stream at 11 and I ran up the road to play the deuce to 7. I saw him there.
It's kind of nice for the players to have that option.
And I sat down and I hadn't heard or seen anyone in the event, and I sat down, I was counting my stack, and I heard from across the table, "Aren't you supposed to be at work?" And I looked up and it was Tony on the other side of the table.
Oh my goodness.
But Mixed Games Academy sharing that room up there with Empire do a great job, and yeah, as I said, just finished and all the staff members coming down to support George today. But Aiden still in the chip lead here with 3.1, but these stacks are so evenly distributed.
Just 13 bigs between the short stack and the big stack. I love these kinds of situations on final tables. You know, if Corey had 10 bigs less, for example, everyone would be playing very, very differently. But all of the stacks can really just choose their own adventure at the moment, and it's going to be a lot down to the players and their individual strategies now. It's a very pure final table here, with some play available to anyone who chooses so.
Just touching again on the Sydney series, just are you able to confirm for us if, you know, these flagship events like the Grind, the Goliath, the Players Champs. I mean, the reason I asked because, you know, those weren't at the previous series at the Voco Centre. So, you know, we're still going to have those tournaments like the Drakakis Players Champions, the Goliath, main event.
I think it's very important for the APT players to know what they're getting at each series. So we want to make sure those flagship events stay and are something that the people who enjoy them have feedback on. So, for example, when I was playing in the Goliath this week, in the Drakakis, in the Grind, this one here, I asked basically everyone at the table, what do you guys think about the structures? What do you guys want to see improved? And it's really interesting, you know. It is hard to get everyone's feedback amalgamated into a product that everyone likes, but I'm always really open and receptive to hearing, Aiden with Queens here under the gun. Maybe we'll pivot back to that in a moment.
3-fold, 5-fold.
Oh, I think we're going to get it through pretty easily against the 8-2-0. Never mind. And yeah, I think those are here to stay. I would like to have some kind of additions, both on the lower end of the spectrum and the higher end of the buy-in spectrum. I think something that's been absolutely so popular here has been the freeze-outs this week. So maybe a bigger freeze-out in Sydney would be nice. Something in the 600 to 800 region on the weekend I think people would really enjoy. And something maybe a little bit larger, but not too big, than the Goliath as well. Especially for those players coming in for State of Origin who want to have something like a bigger, quicker kind of tournament. I think the Goliath in its current shape should basically be, you know, your long, deep stacked event that people really look forward to. And then some of the players who play sort of higher stakes that would fly in for State of Origin might want more of like a single day high roller. Those kind of things that you see on PokerGo, for example. Whereas I know the Drakakis and the Grind, it's really important for a lot of people to still be able to reg on day 2 and have a lot of play throughout day 1. We did some different things here where we added shot clocks to the start of, say, the Goliath, but we phased them in the Drakakis and the Grind when we were down to 32. And people have seemed very open and pretty happy about those changes. Drakakis, we did 40 minutes into 1 hour. This one stays 45 minutes flat. I'll definitely be asking a lot of the players if they preferred Drakakis or this in terms of the way that went down.
I will get onto the shot clocks a bit later, but still want to stay on that topic as Liz.
Ooh, this is a fun river. Aiden River's top pair. I don't think you'll see a lot of money go in, but let's see if Elizabeth ever value bets the 9 of clubs. No.
So just obviously it's not something you can confirm with us now, but just talking out loud. Would that be something like, upwards of a 2.5K, maybe even a 5K single day for a lot of those guys that are coming in for the State of Origin? Because I'm just thinking back to the players that were in those teams at Brisbane. I mean, a 5K would get a lot of runners if all of those guys played, and that's probably around what their buy-in level is. So is that along the lines of something you're potentially thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Now that we've got the captains locked in for those teams, I'll be sort of speaking to them about who they think they might be selecting and, thinking about the kinds of tournaments that might apply at the higher buy-in level. But we don't want to make those exclusively for people just in Origin. We want to make sure that everyone in Sydney will be able to come and play those events as well. So, yeah, I would say something bigger than the Goliath, but nothing much bigger than a 5K, if at all. So we'll see what the players want. I'm very excited that whilst we do lose a legend of the game in Alex Linsky as the Queensland captain this year, Josh McCulley will be there. So he's someone who loves PLO, for example, and maybe he wants a big PLO event. We'll see if there's a lot of people coming to play PLO there.
So you can confirm Josh McCulley is a...
Was there potentially a card reader error there?
No, I have a feeling...
Yeah, just investigating that one, guys. There might have been a card displayed incorrectly there, because it did say that Elizabeth had the 9 of clubs, and would therefore just beat Aiden's top
No,
pair.
Elizabeth's mucked her hand.
Oh, my goodness.
Elizabeth did not realise that she had rivered a flush and never turned over her cards. That
dear.
is a little devastating there for Liz. So
very
no
sorry.
card reader or dealer error there, as Liz just did not open her hand.
Look, it does
Aiden,
happen, unfortunately. I've been there myself.
I can recall Phil Ivey doing the exact
Yes.
same thing deep in the World Series main event in the exact same
he
way.
mucked
and
it straight,
I think he had a flush.
Oh, it's a flush,
I think
yeah,
it was
sorry,
the
yeah.
same type of error. So Elizabeth... yes, 100%. Elizabeth has just mucked her hand. Has obviously seen the rivered top pair of Aiden, and put that one into the muck. So,
well, at least she still has the chip lead. So Elizabeth fans, stay, keep the faith. It can happen. We move on. King 10-0 here now for Corey in the small blind with 15 bigs. Would imagine he's just going to be whacking here a lot. Although Corey does have a habit of finding those kind of smaller sizes in a lot of those situations.
He does. Liam on commentary last night also picked up the same thing. Quite often comes with, when you would think SBR is like 1 or 0.8 or something in a spot where most people would jam the river. Liam actually picked up that Corey usually goes around 60 to 70%, always leaving himself with something behind. So it's good that you picked that up on that as well.
That was a particularly interesting one, not to just put all of them in, given it was blind versus blind as the short stack. He's certainly putting a style on it, I would say. Very interesting.
So even after that misstep there from Liz, still in the chip lead. But as we mentioned multiple times on stream, it can change at any point with less than 1.2 million from top to bottom. Here in our $1,250 buy-in grind final table, $46,000 AUD up top. Had a 100K guarantee for this one, which was smashed early on day one. And speaking of guarantees, today in the Beast, another flagship event, in parentheses, I'd say, is the Beast has always been the Get Out Stakes on a Sunday at APT. $40,000 guarantee for the Beast. It's always been a great event. It's been around since I have been playing as well. So we are also in the money in the main event. That had a $150,000 guarantee. So players still in the room are in the money there. But always good to have a $40,000 guarantee for a $450 buy-in, Didier, on a Sunday.
Absolutely outrageous how well that one always does. It's such a popular event. And just an interesting one here with George flopping a pair and Aiden turning the nut flush. Would imagine George probably doesn't see a river here now after this bet. Yeah.
As we are down to 36 in the main event. And we had top 61 pay in that one. So 36 remain. If I can just get some familiar names potentially as we go around the room. The unstoppable This Hilberts. He had an incredible WPT series. Did this. He's here. He's got chips in the main event.
Runner up in the 5K, I believe, there, yes.
Jonathan Levy.
Oh, well, he added another APT trophy this week to add to the record, I believe. 7 or something?
It has to be the record, doesn't it?
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it is, yeah.
So Jonathan Levy still in the mix. Tom Maguire, can see him still in there.
Oh, I'll just take you back to this hand just really quickly. Got an interesting one here.
But it's not.
Oh, it might be. George getting 3-bet through with Queen Jack O. Oh.
Yeah.
Can also see a potential candidate for your New South Wales State of Origin team, Didier. Cooper Feltham is in the mix.
Yeah.
The King
And
4 suited, right?
I
Yeah.
can also see Kenta. What a 12 months on the felt
like,
Kenta Ito has
At least yours worked.
had, and Liam G, who
yours
has
through.
been incredibly generous with his time up in the commentary booth this week. We had Liam
April
came
Aces or something.
in
Yeah.
the commentary box with us all the way till 3:30 a.m. last night when
It's an
the
actual thing.
grind bagged up at 3:30 local time. So we're here on an unscheduled day 3 as CVJ's got pocket 8s under the gun.
Liam, very skilled at late nights, so I know he can help you out with those.
No, he was quite good. And, of course, that prize pool getting to 263,000 off from that 150K guarantee.
Amazing. Jigsy here with the ace-9 suited. Curious to see how he takes it. Would imagine call.
We will lock registration out at the end of that break. So anybody wishing to late reg or re-enter, you have just under 15 minutes time to do so.
Very interesting. He's gone for the 3-bet. Corey just immediately folds. Wow, great one by Jigsy, knowing his man.
As we mentioned multiple times, so much can change in one pot the way these stacks are evened out. Just, I know you touched on it before, but what changes, you know, if we're this 16 or 20 big blind stack, the way these stacks are distributed? How do we, are we navigating things differently when we're these bottom two stacks?
Yeah, Corey's starting to sort of dispense himself from the pack, and not the way that he wants, obviously. It was interesting that he just snap folded eights there, because he would never expect Jigsy, I suppose, to have any bluffs, I guess, to just snap fold there. He's just imagining it's better value, but...
Well, CVJ didn't watch the stream last night because he would have credited Jigsy for a few bluffs for sure.
Wow, that's interesting. I know Corey, to his credit, actually had to back it up in the main event today as well with his 6 big blinds. So
Yes.
would have been a very quick bedtime for him, I would imagine.
He was the only player remaining in this event when we bagged up at 3:30. So but he bagged under start stack. So we were kind of relying on the fact that, not that we don't want him to bust. We obviously don't want him to bust, but we thought with under start stack, you know, it would probably be more unlikely that he wouldn't make it through another 3 hours. So he busted fairly quickly. So we decided to bring everyone back a couple of hours earlier today at 3 o'clock. Obviously, it's myself and Didier commentating this to you off the delay. So we're commentating it to you as you see it. And that's what happened there. So CVJ was the only one that had a bag in the main event, and he busted, and now here we are.
Yeah, when we were watching last night, I think Johan also was the other person on the final table who had a stack, and he finished in 7th, I believe it was.
Yeah,
And then Corey was still in, but he only had about 6 big blinds in the main event. So he returned at midday, played that, and now the players have resumed. David saying Sam Adams might be close there. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. I think Jonathan's on 7.
No, I think Sam Adams has the record for either most caches.
Ah,
or I think
okay,
he's got
yep.
the most caches record. As
Water, George. Jigs, good. All good. Thank you.
4 shots of vodka as well.
we've got 200 entries in the beast
just
now,
one
and we can still enter until the end of level 12. So
It'll wake me up.
looking to eclipse that guarantee once again. Be nearly double that guarantee, I dare say, with the amount of runners and time left to register late. Of course, the beast starting here at 11:30 in the morning. So Hayden comes in here with the King Queen.
And George defends the 24, the 4-2-0.
Have seen this from George from time to time. Overcalled the King 3 off last night as well. Man loves to see some flops.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, with Corey so short, you might want to deviate away from defending everything that you might without the pressure of the final table pair jumps. But Aiden's also been a bit passive post, so sometimes this can happen, and you can just realize with all of your equity. George, thinking about cooking up a value bet with the deuce. No. Check and wins. Very reasonable. Looked like he had some devious thoughts there for a moment. Would have enjoyed to watch it.
Yeah, the term.
Got me. 3-2, so.
A very respectable achievement by Sam Adams nonetheless there, David, with the most caches and most FTs. Most individual caches, I take it means.
And he's back now. He's back in the room. I've seen Sam Adams around this week.
Needs to make sure he can't be caught.
And he actually...
I'm sure he's probably doing well on the trophy count too.
Thanks, Fernanda.
Poison.
Sabotage.
Just having a look at all of
poisoned
those
it. Oh,
records.
definitely.
Sam Adams, most cashes and final tables, and Jonathan Levy extends his lead to 7. But having a look at the all-time cashes for APT, as a very familiar name at the top of the list. It is yourself, Didier, in the booth with us, and I'm led to believe a small cash of $3,200 put you in the number 1 spot.
Got it over the line, yeah. Yi Chung, my friend slash nemesis, was ahead of me by about $800. So nice to have that on him. Maybe encourage him to come get that record back.
What's the total amount of cashes there that I think put you in the number 1 spot?
I think it's about 422 or maybe 425k. It'll update this week, I believe.
So, number 1 in all-time cashes, but you're going to have to keep playing to keep it, I dare say, if you're only...
Got a few people close there, you know. It seems like when Andy Lee ever comes and plays, he just wins the tournament, so he's always a threat. Oh, Elizabeth here with the aces and the ace of diamonds, always a nice flop there with the backup.
And 680k in this pot. What was how much of that 400k was the 25k?
The overwhelming majority, I have to admit. Yeah,
okay.
it was. My score was 412 in that. So
yeah,
did the overwhelming work in one score, admittedly.
I mean, if you do see the rankings of the top lifetime money earners, around the world, a lot of those scores are coming from 1 drops, and then like half of their end of mob is coming from like 1 tournament. So
yeah. There's certainly people with more impressive records in terms of consistency, I have to concede.
As Hayden looks to be sizing Elizabeth up here as our graphics just catch up. We're not sure as Hayden appears to have flicked in a time bank.
Interesting way to have played aces, checking back flop and turn here.
Liz definitely has her own style.
Yeah.
Serving her well in this tournament. Served her well in this one last year. Of course, second to Dipper in the grind in this very event at the Gold Coast. And that's probably what's confused Aiden as Liz looks over to Aiden, and I think he might be counting some chips out here. Just not 100% sure.
Send him to the cage, Liz.
And no, he folds that one. And on to that point, as Aiden Hildebrandt flicks in a time bank chip, you did touch on introducing shot clocks, for example, phasing them in the last 36, and they've definitely played a big part on the broadcast. We've had lots of hero calls when players are out of time banks and whatnot. So just talk about the decision to slowly introduce time banks here at APT.
Well, it's just moving with the industry. Players really want to see these, particularly once registration has closed, I would say roughly, or as you get closer to the money. And I think the last thing people want to see, whether they're a recreational or a professional themselves, is the tanking that can affect some tournaments. And it's been a great atmosphere here at APT. We haven't had any of that sort of toxic tanking, I like to call it personally. See that at the WSOP most years these days. And I think a lot of people don't enjoy the element of that part of the game of poker. They just want to be playing the game and not seeing people just sit there and do nothing as a strategy. And I think as a strategy, it's a very dull addition to the game that is now being phased out. You don't really need more than 30 seconds for a lot of decisions, and if you do, at APT, I think it's been nice that we've been a little bit kinder with the amount of time banks. You'll see at a lot of other venues, they might do 4 time banks. We've tried it out with 6 this week, and I think people have been using that 3 minutes all up quite effectively. As we see the players here, I think all of them still have the majority of theirs, if not some. So we definitely don't want to be introducing it in a way that's making it easier for the operator as APT. We want to be introducing it as a way that's better for the player experience. So it's sort of a middle ground in introducing them, but giving you a little bit more shot clocks than other venues.
And there's definitely been times, especially in Australia in the last 18 months, where I've never heard the term toxic tanky is actually that's not too bad. Nice alliteration there from you. But
Thank you. Oh, this will be going in.
5,000.
Of course, our boy Corey never quite putting it all in, I should say.
Yeah, so just to touch on that, there's definitely some, it's happened here quite often before the time banks. It happens in a lot of other places. It definitely seems to be where the winds are blowing in terms of tournaments around the world.
Yeah.
We could even see a point in time potentially where every single tournament you get handed 10 or 20 time bank chips for the whole duration of the day.
And operators are going about it in slightly different ways. You know, there's arguments whether you want your time banks to reset or if you want to actually let them accumulate. There's pros and cons. You know, I personally don't mind the accumulation because it lets players who act faster in the earlier phases of the tournament have a bit more for the FT. But I've also noticed tuning in this week that sometimes, I think it was at Cooper and Amin's heads up in the bounty, there was no time banks.
They both run out.
It made it quite interesting viewing as well, you know, so I can see the arguments for both sides. What I would say is just having them in some capacity is quite important. And yeah, it's definitely making the game flow more nicely.
I think that we had Liam Murray in the booth with us during the week, and he mentioned he went over to South Korea, and every single tournament on the schedule, the time banks get introduced as soon as late regs close. That's something
great,
that's something that I feel like is, got some potential down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got some interaction here, George, with bottom pair and a flop flush draw, and he seems to lead for 2/3.
Yep, that's a spicy turn. I have to admit, it's been very interesting, the sort of passivity on earlier streets by basically all of the players on this final table. We saw Elizabeth with the aces just a hand before, Jigsy here with top on a pretty wet board, also finding the check on the flop here in position. So, yeah, I mean, I can understand George thinking that he's going to give himself a lot of options on this river by betting here. But Jigsy's also had his own style, I've noticed, throughout this week. I think he's probably thinking between both options, looking at George's stack here. He's probably thinking he could jam. Yeah, I would have expected to see that there.
And that is a snap call from George. And 26% of the time, George K will be going home.
Yep, very
74.
interesting.
Apologies, I got that around the wrong way. As Jigs has top
How many
pair,
hand is yours? George?
75%. It's going to have 10 outs once.
Huge pot for Corey as well.
It is. Corey gets that pay jump. If Jigsy's king, queen holds here, those folded outs do come into account on our graphics. So it's going to be 10 outs left in the deck once for George K to stay alive. It's not there.
Unlucky George.
And George will be out in 5th place here in the grind. The $1,250 buy-in. We lose George K in 5th place. Was short for a lot of the day yesterday and managed to spin that up for an $11,000 score. Was that always inevitable, those two hands getting in on that turn, or even the flop there? Didier, what are your thoughts?
Nice hand.
Look, I think by the time George had got to where he was in that hand, he would think that his pair was occasionally actually going to be good, given the texture on board and not seeing any aggression on the flop. Whether he wants to bet the turn is a pretty interesting decision. Something to consider when Corey is as short as he is. So, I mean, Corey's going to be thinking back to that pocket eights hand right now and not even worrying if he was bluffed by Jigsy. He's going to feel like a bit of a genius by finding the pay jump there. But, yeah, certainly two huge hands interacting. Jigsy taking another unique line by not c-betting the flop, I would say, is definitely the talking point as well from that hand.
I think as well we've got CVJ's mum in the chat. Misty, good to see you there.
Hi, Misty.
You've been with us for 3 days supporting your son Corey, and you're going to be very happy with that elimination from George K as CVJ secures that pay jump.
Yep, he's made a few extra grand, Misty.
Yeah.
$46,000, of course, up top here. 4 remaining.
Jigsy pulling away now with 53 bigs.
This would be an APT Series to remember. Taking down the grind and the Players' Champs is some feat if it was to happen.
So now the ICM begins to sort of
He went.
become a bit more defined now that the stacks
That's a nice
are
turn card, that
beginning
one.
to separate.
Oh, that's
We've
the
got
actual one.
15, 24, 32, and 53 bigs.
So there's nothing like a good plan B.
As just recapping around the room, we got an $84,000 prize pool over in the Beast, doubling our guarantee.
Huge.
217 runners
Wow.
in that one. And
If you're in Brisbane,
registration has now closed,
you
but
jam it
we
before?
have got that $80,000
So you didn't
prize
think you were
pool
good.
in the Beast.
When do you get snapped off as well?
And if you are looking to play it later on in the day, we've got the PLO 5 Frenzy, the $250 dealer day event. The big closer, we'll see how we go there potentially.
Yeah.
You might be in that one, Didier. And
yeah,
if
if you want to
you're
close it out.
looking to have a little bit of a muck around and a little bit of fun with your mates, a couple of drinks on a Sunday night, we do have the $120 Sunday Turbo Bounty event for you as well.
Some bounties on your mates to finish off the series is always fun.
Nothing like it, right?
Yeah. But yeah, back to the stack sort of separation now. It would look like Elizabeth is sort of the most strategically inclined to start playing a little bit tighter. If she can allow Jigsy to put pressure on Corey and Aiden, it's probably going to be a money-making adventure for her. So whether or not she wants to do that is certainly going to be interesting to watch, but I would say that her stack sort of is beginning to carve out as having the most defined strategy outside of Jigsy, who will himself want to be putting the pressure on Aiden and Corey and trying to build up a big chip lead for whoever he would take on if he is to hold out for it. Rico making a comment I absolutely agree with in the chat. 1 minute is more than enough for people, so we've gone with 30 seconds for all decisions here. Braden, you'll see at some of the other operators at the highest level, Triton does different things like 15 seconds pre-flop or 20 seconds pre-flop and then does 30 seconds post-flop. So we wanted to make it a little bit more as we introduce these things, the same, I suppose you could say, for both dealers who are introduced to it for the first time. That certainly doesn't apply to Jacob, one of the most experienced on the Australian tour here, and one of the very best. But for some of the other dealers learning them for the first week, we're just doing 30-30, and for the players who haven't played them before, just keeping it simple and going 30-30 pre and post. But some players have said, yeah, 20 might be better pre, so something that we're definitely listening to and taking on board.
One thing, I'm just trying to think of counterpoints for having no time banks, and I'm certainly on your side 100%, but just playing devil's advocate. A couple of arguments I've heard, especially if you're a regulator that it's running a lot of satellites or feeder stuff through pubs or a smaller regulator, you want to even the edge between recreationals and people who play the game for a living. And a few people have mentioned to me that time banks are the way to it does favour professionals more so than recreationals, but it really just seems to be the way that the winds are blowing in terms of time banks, even when if you do think about it very simply, that probably does have a little advantage towards professionals, but I can see the other regulators' point of view for not having them just based on that.
Yeah, we haven't had them in some of the smaller buy-ins because I'm not sure if there is the same appetite for them. It's a tricky thing to sort of get right, A lot of people want them, some people aren't ready for them yet. But yeah, I think as we, over the next few years, see them introduced here, they're going to be more and more common.
Yeah.
Whether people do appreciate them or not, that is probably the trend.
I mean, and not that this would be a reason why regulators would bring it in, but it makes for some compelling viewing on stream. We saw Jared Thatcher call off Jen Castle's flop straight with ace I, and he got to the river with no time banks, as we have lost the stream a little bit. That might be someone that's standing in front of the camera, but we'll see. We'll try and bring that back to you as soon as possible. We will have the picture back for you shortly. And Jared called off Jen in that spot with ace high. And remember, he put his chips in really quickly, and it looked like a snap call, but I spoke to him about it, and he'd actually just run out of time banks, so he had to make the decision there and then. So it does make for really compelling viewing.
Even though we don't have a picture here, it's a fascinating river in the sense that Aiden's improved to better than a bluff catch. Oh, and Jigsy has decided to slow down, but
We think.
I certainly, yeah. There's still an option here because we're not expecting Aiden to check back to pair here at all. But I was certainly interested to see whether Jigsy fired this river or not with just the 6 high. And like you said, Braden, he might not be done if he wants to consider check raise against whatever size Aiden finds here, but confident he'll find one, and there it is, 350.
Maybe.
He's gone very small, just the 1/3, and no interest by Jigsy.
No bluff.
Yes, we're working hard to get this picture back for you. Hopefully we're not guessing the action for the rest of the day.
A screenshot for Corey's friends, the 0% aggression frequency. I know that one's going to be in all the group chats with his close friends later. I've been in that experience before. But you can win after having that stat displayed. I've had the 0% VPIP displayed, Braden, and I've done it.
What were you not? Were you in the toilet? Or were you not at the
No,
table?
I was physically present, perhaps not mentally, but I was there. And my dear friend Alex Trevelyan had 100% at that stage. Sometimes the VPIP just gets calculated a little bit quickly. Sometimes you're just a victim of the VPIP calculator.
Sometimes. Obviously, you've got to take into account, if you are watching at home, it doesn't take into account all of our coverage. It just takes into account from when we started the stream today. So Corey has displayed some aggression over the last 2 days, just not 0%
He has
today.
played some hands, guys.
Yes.
No, of course, it's just a very small sample size, as we'd say in the technical term. You're not going to witness a lot of hands in general at just a final table, Professionals talk about using a sample size or an amount of hands to study or look at, and usually 10,000 is the number. So, these final tables and tournaments in general can be quite high variance and not be indicative results-wise of players' styles or tendencies or even resumes.
As we can hazard a guess that this one's going in, we think.
Corey leaving the 50k behind.
Before do so.
Maybe he heard us about the aggression frequency, I think.
So we have seen Corey do that quite often, as we might have to
But I keep peeling the 8
keep
and then just being like, just
guessing
really
the action.
And then I
What
did get ace, and then
what
Jiggy
are the
three got me
benefits
back to fold
of?
anyway.
We see Corey's done this more so than anyone else, but what are the benefits of leaving that, the 55k behind there, blind versus blind, the 10k there when he jammed the 10s over Jigsy's raise? What are the benefits we're talking about when we?
I would have to speculate in some of those spots that it's just more of a stylistic thing for Corey in terms of not wanting to say the word all in or not wanting to have all in declared, because there are certainly strategic situations where we can put in the majority of our stack and still have the ability to fold behind. However, when he's closing the action and heads up, that does not apply. So I would say it's Corey actually just putting his own spin and style on it for what we've seen today, but I think being a well-respected coach and player that he is, he would also be doing that in situations where there is more of a strategic benefit, as I was alluding to before. We've got our coverage back. Lovely to see our 4 players again.
Don't have to guess the action anymore.
So we've got a raise on the button by Aiden with the 10-8 suited, and Elizabeth has defended Queen 6-0 and deciding to lead at it here with the Queen of Hearts.
Aiden not going anywhere as yet, though.
Backdoor flush draw pair, too good, and
I mean, look at the way the stacks are distributed. Look, this is already a really important pot after a raise, call, and a lead. There's already a million in it.
Absolutely, yeah. Between the two stacks vying to be second, I suppose, and the presence of Corey is going to be on both of their minds. Obviously, in terms of strategy, they'd both be wanting to see him gone and locking up the third place pay jump. Oh, wow, what a turn for Aiden.
Oh, no, this is going to be it. A misstep from Liz's.
A massive jam. Oh my goodness.
Liz.
And Aiden can't snap here. If people are wondering why he hasn't snap called with a 10, he is really worried about what's going on here right now. He's trying to find which value hands a Liz would be doing this with. I think we are going to see the call, but
2,040,000.
yeah, I don't blame him for not snapping. Is I guess the alibi I'm giving in advance to the people who are wondering why. But he
Aiden
will find
only
it.
has one big blind behind, but
And a huge
Elizabeth
hand.
is drawing dead, and that is going to be the end. Or
You are such a
did she
game
have
winner,
25k
Elizabeth.
behind?
You're such a game
I fold
star.
any turn.
You nearly made
Not
me
too
fold.
I think Aiden covers. Looking at the all-in counts, but
we will get a
Oh, yeah.
confirmation of this, but this could be the end of Elizabeth Bousson's incredible run here in the
very
grind.
tight. Yeah. Well,
We'll get a confirmation count, but it looks like Liz is
she is
eliminated.
Liz, what a run!
Second in the grind last year to Dipper at the Gold Coast. Backs it up again with a fourth. What an incredible story she has. And what it was amazing to be able to see her navigate against the best players in the country for 2 days. She held the chip lead in the event basically for 3 whole days.
What a run!
And at 80 years of age, and that is 100% correct. Doesn't look a day over 60, but she's 80 years of age.
I mean, unless I
And
have like a really good ace
that
and I just get
is
a read that like, yeah, it's really tough.
an incredible run
Yeah.
from
I think
Liz.
you would have made him fold an ace. Maybe
Bad
not
ace for
king.
sure, yeah. Like a good ace, I'm like in the blender, or like,
Yeah, and you can hear the players giving her credit for all the hands Aiden would have folded.
And we will have a new chip leader after that hand.
You did pretty good.
Aiden Hildebrandt, 5.8 million. It's getting dicey now for CVJ, but
Well, he's still going to
Still
feel
got
like
12
a
bigs.
genius. I know Misty will be cheering, watching her boy get another pay jump here into third. And Corey's gone on a bit of an adventure on this final table, you know, just finding pay jump after pay jump.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Liz
Good game.
exits the stage in 4th place. 17,000. What's that? Did he
won
around
15,000,
15 buy-ins?
that's
If you won
pretty good.
15 buy-ins every day in poker, you'd never
I'd
have
be
to
doing
work
quite
again.
well.
in
No,
the
I'd be
day
doing
in your
very
life.
well. That would be a good average win rate. I'd be very pleased.
What's the strategy here for CVJ with the way these stacks are distributed between Aiden and Jigsy?
He has to go for it because they're now more than 3 times his stack size or 4 times his stack size in the 2 instances of Jigsy and Aiden respectively. So, yeah, while this might have been the exact hand you saw him fold earlier, I think he had, maybe it was exactly a 7-0 under the gun and it was just a snap fold. Now he's got to be going for it. And this is actually a moment where his non-all-in makes a bit more sense for Aiden. I was hoping we would get to see an illustration of it, but now that he's leaving the 365k behind, he's run into 8C with Jigsy, who's going to at least call. And then if Aiden was to wake up in the big blind with something additionally, and say he goes all in, then Corey would actually have an opportunity to fold and potentially ladder to second. When he was doing it a bit earlier, it didn't have as much strategic merit, if I'm quite frank. But it that's not a diss on Corey. I'm just saying it was stylistic before. This is more strategic. I'm using that alliteration again, aren't I?
Yeah, what are we waiting for here, though, as Jigsy decides to finally put
I think
this one
he's
in?
deciding between call or jam. And yeah, he's going for jam, which is interesting.
And Jigsy,
Probably going to just call there most of the time.
if
Good luck, Jigsy.
8th holds here, it will be Jigs Reyes and Aiden Hildebrandt. Heads up. CVJ looking to spike an ace to get back into this one.
Vip it. Vip it.
Misty cheering on at home for her son, CVJ, but there's nothing doing there. In fact, he's very close to be touring dead.
Yeah, that's
and
what's
that
going to do
will end it.
Farewell, Corey. It was a good adventure for Corey today. He did pretty much as well as he could do with the cards he was dealt, and he just navigated. And sometimes being a professional tournament player is just navigating these final tables, even if you don't win. Could be a sixth, could be a third, and look at the difference in the pay drop for Corey today.
As we are going to be heads up now with Jigs Reyes and Aiden Hildebrand. If Jigs takes this one down, it would be his second trophy for the week. And it looks like these two are discussing potentially a deal.
They are quite deep. I believe it's going to be 100 big blind heads up either way if we're at 30-60. Oh, no, sorry. Forgive me.
We're just going to count the stacks out here. Bear with us, but Aiden looks pretty keen on...
Sorry, 61-20. 50 big blind heads up.
Don't do it for him, mate. He'll get used to it. Almost. He's going so well to open my mouth.
As it looks like Aiden and Jigsy are discussing a deal here. They are going to have a look at the numbers, so bear with us while our TD discusses with the players what they want to do. They look fairly keen on sorting something out, so we'll see what happens here if we leave some aside and play for the trophy, potentially. But they're going to definitely have a look at the numbers, so bear with us. Didier, what is the approach here between these two players when discussing a deal? We're fairly even and we are pretty deep. What would you be doing in a situation like this?
I have to admit, I think this leans more into your personal circumstances rather than your strategic ones. Obviously, in terms of strategy, you want to be weighing up how much better you think you are than your opponent. And that can be an internal battle as well as an external battle in terms of ego and honest analysis. But I think personal circumstances should actually be your driving factor here. How much does this money mean to you? Are you going to be able to play, quote unquote, your normal game for this amount of money where the majority of the prize pool is now available for you to win? There's no bigger pay jump. So some people just aren't comfortable with that, but yeah, it looks like they've discussed something and
I think
they've gone different ways.
Talk to their respective rails, I think.
That was almost like a bit of a meme. I'll see you in a minute. They've gone to go speak to their respective support groups, which is also a good strategy.
I, for one, if I was in Jigsy's spot, I wouldn't want to be playing Aiden Hildebrand heads up at a very deep stack depth. Nothing against Jigsy at all, but Aiden's so experienced
And
over such a long time.
that may be where Aiden discusses negotiating the numbers. Maybe he might not want to do the exact ICM and say, if you want to do a deal with me and take the trophy home now, you're going to have to give me a little bit better than second.
Yep.
That is something that is not unreasonable if both players were to think that there was a significant skill edge, but Jigsy may not think that at all and say, no, I'll do the normal ICM or not. So it's always kind of exciting, a little bit of a non-hand of poker being played, but it's still a sweat nonetheless.
But most of the money is going to happen in this conversation,
exactly,
not over a poker hand.
It's almost the business side of things being done.
Jared Thatcher made a really good point to me. I remember when he was in the booth in Brisbane last year that, tournament players do a lot of study on their game, full ring and six max, but not a lot of people actually do any study heads up. And when you're playing a tournament, that's where all the money is.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've focused on at any point? Because when you think about it in quite simple terms, most of the money is up top, and not many people are studying heads up spots. That are tournament regulars. So
it's an interesting one because, even when I've done coaching as well, people have asked me about this, and I think it's actually a bit like ICM as well. I always try and tell people who I'm giving advice to work on your chip EV game first. That is, hands when you're playing the tournament normally from the beginning, because that is where you are going to be playing the majority of your poker. So, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of other respected pros that I've discussed this with, I think, a feeling that you need to be so good at the earlier parts of your game to actually warrant the study of further parts of the tournament, where there are going to be lots of concepts that you need to navigate, but ultimately you can always be improving your chip EV game every single day, and those are the most common situations you're going to be finding. So I think Jared's quite correct in the sense that I'm actually not convinced you should be putting a lot of heads-up study in, because it's not a situation, regardless if you're Phil Ivey or not Phil Ivey, of somewhere you're going to necessarily be all that often. I've had the opportunity over my career to do things like playing heads-up sit and goes on PokerStars back in the day when it was still legal here in Australia, so I've been fortunate to have a bit more experience than some people. I've also probably got most of my heads-up experience playing cash online, and even for someone like me with that kind of experience, it's immediately different in tournaments because you're playing with a big blind ante. So playing with a big blind ante in tournaments is quite different to cash or the original form of like even heads up sit and goes. So it's actually kind of a new format. I think a lot of operators have now got the big blind ante and play heads up, and that's been sort of a movement over the last 2 years, I want to say. I could be off by 6 months this way or that way, maybe 2.5 or a year and a half. So it's actually something a lot of pros, funnily enough, haven't done themselves. But it's interesting. I can't necessarily sit here in front of you today, Braden, and say that I would advocate for doing it. And it is funny because the juxtaposition of that is this is where all the money is. But I think if you did want to do study outside of the chip EV stuff, I would lean to saying move on to ICM first. You know, that being look at final tables, look at what, you know, maybe your strategies should look like on the bubble. But that's the rank of how important it should be. Start with chip EV, go to ICM, and then if you really want to do heads up, sure. What I would prefer people to maybe study heads up for would be if they're specifically going to play heads up. You know, I'll give our friends at APO a shout. They've got a heads up tournament there next week. You know, if you're going to play that, that would be a reason to study some heads up. Or if you're going to be playing some heads up online, I think those would be better examples of when you should be studying heads up. If you're a professional tournament player, it would be lower on the list of things to do.
ICM there, and speaking of that, yeah, I can announce that.
Two to go, please, players. Two to go. Last chance to get into the basement.
Oh, wow.
Sitting on the sidelines, babes. We are looking at in just under 2 minutes' time at the end of the break. Already over $83,000.
Your prediction comes through, Braden.
We're looking at in just under 2 minutes.
$520 and the trophy, and Aiden Hildebrand effectively comes second for only $1,000 less, $37,479. So
Wow, so they did negotiate. Interesting.
Yes, that's the end of play there, and that's it for the grind. It's a very abrupt end. Didier, it's been amazing to have you in the
Thank you for having me.
incredible. Thank you about Sydney and everything else that comes with it.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Recap, going to have no heads up playing in 38,500 and Aiden Hildebrand second, 37,179.
Congrats, Jigsy.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Braden.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We'll be back with you in the. We'll be back with you to stream the main event. As we just want to recap here, a deal has been done. Jigsy takes out the trophy with no heads-up play. 38,500 going to Jigsy, 37,500 going to Aiden Hildebrand. So nearly just an ICM deal. It's been negotiated a little. Jigsy will take home the trophy and 38,000. Didier, thank you so much. We'll be back in an hour or so. Keep an eye out for us to bring you the end of the main event here at APT. We'll see you soon.
Dealers and beats, please shuffle up and deal. 1,500, 3,000, 3,000.